Brian Beveridge has more than 30 years of experience in communications. Beginning as a technical writer, he went on to receive a BA degree in mass communications from the University of South Florida. From 1987 to 2004, Mr. Beveridge owned and managed an independent video production company in the Bay Area. He has created marketing programs for Fortune 500 corporations such as Shell Oil, produced TV programs for the Sports Channel and the San Francisco Giants, and written and directed documentary videos for state and local nonprofit groups, including the California Child Care Resource and Referral Network and the East Bay Asian Local Development Corporation. A new resident to West Oakland in 1999, Mr. Beveridge joined the struggle for environmental justice. In 2003, after personally experiencing the toxic emissions from the Lesaffre Corporation's Red Star Yeast factory in his neighborhood. Please welcome Mr. Brian Beveridge and Ms. Margaret Gordon.
So thank you for allowing me to be here today. I feel pretty much outclassed by this panel. So proud of my bachelor's degree.
Go, Brian.
Need to rewrite my resume, I think. I hope you forgive me for that work I've done with the global oil companies in my younger, more naive days. I've been trying to think about, two things came up. One was, as I was listening, given my limited capacity, I was wondering how, and this isn't a criticism, it's really a question for us all. I was wondering how any of us would go away today and go back to our respective neighborhoods and explain what we could. Language is a powerful thing, and language is a powerful piece of our entitlement and our privilege. And one of the things we do in our work is to try to translate between groups that have different kinds of privilege. And that is to say that there is privilege in all groups. We all have authority within our own environments, and we all have ways of speaking. So one of the things we try to do in our work is to translate, to help translate between the regulator and the community member, between the politician and the voter, just to be in that space where we're empowering both sides to communicate better with each other. So I think it's important for us all to think about how we would communicate these ideas. We think about how would we communicate these ideas, and we would go back and talk to our neighbors who are congregating on the corner and chatting about life in West Oakland. One might ask, how would I go back and communicate these ideas to the people there in the village in Bangladesh that someone mentioned that will be so effective? And I think this is a really, this is a deep challenge for all of us. The other thing, being neither theologian nor philosopher, I was trying to think how to relate what I'm going to say, which is fairly practical, to this arena, as it were, this environment. And I think the best I can do is to just mention mindfulness. There's a lot, I don't think we have answers. We have lists of potential things we can do about climate. I don't think we exactly have answers. What we have are a lot of things that will have implications we don't know about yet, that every act we take will probably have unintended consequences. And the best we can do is to be really mindful with every step we take. And to realize we have to continue to take steps. That we walk a path now that's somewhat laid out. We can still change the future. We can't unwalk the past. And we also can't we can't just clump up on the path and stand there and talk about it. That's the other thing we have to do, is to keep moving forward. So that's the total of my philosophy for today. This is a presentation that was created with us by a group in a pre-master's program at UC Berkeley. We basically asked them, would you Photoshop a picture of an intersection in West Oakland, and so we can sort of put it into visual reference. We talk a lot about sea level rise and this many feet and that many inches and storm surge, but what does it really look like? And that was the genesis of this project, and as they wanted to do, the students took it a lot further, and it turned out to be a really interesting thing. So, let's see, one of these will work. So, well, part of this is missing. So, this slide actually has a cyclic graph in it. I don't know what happened to it in the translation, but about every, I don't know, 100,000 years.
Sorry, I was trying to see if it would show up.
Oh, okay. But every 100, I don't know, 100, there's about 4 cycles in here over 650,000 years. Never passing 300. In the last end here, it just spikes to 400 in the past 500 years or so, and therein lies our problem. This is a series of, climate change 101. Sea ice has been declining. We may realize that sea ice isn't really the big problem, although it's an example of the problem. It's the land ice that will turn this into a series of offshore islands, right? Someone mentioned 7 inches. Research we had said 8 in the past century or so. 55-inch moderate sea level rise plus storm surge predicted for sometime this century. If Antarctica melts, all bets are off, right? That can mean hundreds of feet of sea level rise. So we don't want Antarctica to melt. Just the sort of very simple, here's what it looks like, right? We have not only sea level, ambient sea level kind of, but then storm surge on top of that. And this talks about a 4-foot storm surge. I grew up on the Gulf Coast, and this is like child's play. 20-foot storm surge during a hurricane, you don't even think about it. It's like a tidal wave, right? So these are very moderate predictions. Just to show, you maybe live I mean, we think this is like the Port of Oakland and places like that are being hardened against sea level rise. They're being raised up and fixed so they won't flood. Here's West Oakland behind it, back in the flatlands. This is the shoreline and how it's changed. This is really West Oakland over here. This is the original plot map for downtown Oakland. Here is in the 1890s when they had plotted out this area. Some of this is still marshland here, but they were imagining it all residential as the residential expansion continued. Here it is with that 55-inch sea level and a 48-inch storm surge. Our office is right about here. This is the 880 freeway. And I want you to look at this little sort of pointed section right here, which I think is interesting. I think I have this slide. If we go back to this slide, you'll note this little pointed section right here, this was all marshland. So essentially nature wants it all back, right? This slide didn't make the cut, but essentially talking about the blue area being areas of inundation and some of the things that we might lose in the Bay Area. This is here's the flood map. Here's the West Oakland Transit Village, which is probably going to be $300 or $400 million worth of economic development, building condos and office buildings around the West Oakland BART station. And so we go back to mindfulness, what are we thinking about as we do these things? Here is sort of getting to the crux of the biscuit. This is Mandela Parkway and 7th Street. Our office is right about there. And these are new affordable housing area here. And the BART station, which is going to get an eight-story office building someday, not too long in the future. And here it is with a 55-inch and 4-foot storm surge. This is what it means today. This is who's there. You'll note there's about 8,500 people. Median income is about a half of the median for Oakland. It is predominantly people of color, and 70% of people rent their homes. When you think about security or vulnerability, we have to, these two factors, I think, are very significant, as well as income. So we'll take a look at a different spot. Oh, here's some of the things that we might lose in that prospect. Housing. Here's some of the investments that exist. Just sort of keep a few of these numbers in mind. And some of the institutional elements that are also at risk at this intersection. BART's power transformers are under the tracks at grade level. And West Oakland is one of the choke points. Every train in the system goes through West Oakland. 5 transit lines that a lot of people depend on who don't use BART. So here's Jack London Square, about half a mile away. If you've ever been to Jack London Square, you'll see it has about a quarter of the population, 5 times the median income, and that must be, I was wondering who that was. The alarm I set for my parking meter. 80% white, 5 times the income, a quarter of the population. The question here is, if we have to make a decision, and we always have to make decisions, who gets saved? Who gets fixed? How quickly do they get fixed? How is that choice made? Who makes that choice? I mean, that's the fundamental, in our minds, a fundamental question of equity and justice. If we look at Katrina, we saw whose stuff got fixed and whose didn't, and whose stuff still isn't fixed, and whose stuff was. Any insurance underwriters in the room? Any actuarialists? Talk about being mindful. No one even wants to talk about these losses and what it means and who's going to pay for it, and whether you, in 10 years, you'll even be able to get insurance in some of the low-lying areas of the Bay Area. We're not having that conversation. I'm going to move quickly through these. This is the comparison. Who will be protected? You can make those projections for yourself. But this is a key question we need to be asking ourselves. It's not only between the United States and Bangladesh, but we have these issues taking place right here in our own communities. Some other things missing. Institutional and municipal resources. How are we going to pay to fix this stuff? As Margaret mentioned, some of the stuff in our neighborhood is 100 years old. When do we get the money to fix it? Who's going to fix it? Who's going to pay for it? Will it go on your property bill, right? 70% of the people there don't own any property. What's going to happen to them as the cost of infrastructure goes up and that burden is laid on taxpayers? Storm drains. We'll be more reliant on storm drains as things change. If these systems aren't upgraded, repaired, and taken care of. When you live in a low-lying area, this is what gets the water out of the way. If it doesn't work, then you live in a flood. Right? The systems are very old in Oakland. This is what it looked like during the El Nino in the late 90s. We have a tremendous infiltration of rainwater in the sanitary storm system, because the sanitary storm system is all fractured. So it fills up with rainwater. So, and you can't flush the toilets in some parts of the neighborhood after 5 or 6 days of rain in this time of year. There are lots of people, lots of stakeholders involved in this process, and no one knows really how to fix it. We just did a $600 million bond issue in Oakland, and they talk about using it to fix the streets, which need to be fixed, but they don't talk about the underground infrastructure. We have over 70 toxic soil sites in West Oakland. What happens when those are saturated and flooded in the water? And that just turns into a soup that you have to wade through to get to the bus station, if the buses are even running, right? Lots of things to think about and be mindful. There's that map of toxic sites. You can see a lot of them are in inundation zones. I'm going to bounce through some of these, but we have a lot of old industrial sites, and that means we have a lot of toxic sites. And not enough money in the system to clean them up. They can be cleaned up, but there's not enough money available to do it. We have a Superfund site right next to our office that's been 20 years in the making. We're gonna have a party here, and all invited on the 18th. Finally gonna flip the switch on the cleanup machine, and after 20 years of effort on the part of the US EPA, we have to thank them for making that happen. Who's vulnerable? Who should we be thinking about? What happens to people? Pick any 3 of these and say it's a human being, and say what happens to them in a flood? What happens to them? How does climate change affect an unemployed, pregnant, low-income woman? A person who's been imprisoned for the past 18 years and finally got out. People over 65 that aren't in very good physical fitness and have no access to a vehicle. What happens to these people? We don't really have plans right at the moment. And a couple of neighborhoods, I'm just going to skip through. We could go into greater depth. Other cities are doing things, but I would say we're probably not doing them quickly enough. A lot of this is about empowering communities to participate. And that's the essence of our work, to empower communities to participate. Not to do it for them, not to hand them things, but to empower them to make choices for themselves. And I'm way over time, so I'm going to bounce through. And
how about we discuss these in our discussion? Yeah, those are great questions.
thank you very much.
Thank you so much.